Hey guys, how's it going? So today I'm going to explain the lore behind the Saber Bond CEs, okay, let's go. Crown of the Stars has some direct Nazi-verse related connotations, but at the end of the day, I believe the best description is this. The stars, or rather, star in the original Japanese name, is referencing the Earth and as such dictates who is a ruler on the Earth. This alludes to the Arthurian legend that Arthur will return as the once and future king of the Britons. Altera's features her coming to Earth. In Fate, Altera is actually an alien, and this Bond CE is reminiscent of her leaving the eternal solitude of space in favor of living as a walking, living god of war. Saber Lilies is kind of interesting because it's actually showing her death. This is the scene of her corpse being taken to Avalon. The reason why Saber Lily has this as her Bond CE is that she supposedly saw her own fate play out after pulling out Caliburn from the stone, but decided to continue on that path regardless. Nero's Bond CE is her theater, the Domus Aurea, which translates to the Golden House. This was a building favored by Nero and built after the Great Fire of 64 CE. Nero actually helped design the building alongside the engineers to make sure that every detail was correct, but did not live long enough to see the project fully completed. In the Fate rendition though, this is where her subjects would come to revel in their glorious emperor and give her the uproarious applause that she so craves. One of the things that occurred when Saber became Salter was a shift in her spirit core that seems to have accentuated the draconic aspect of her identity. In doing so, her entire personality changed, and thus she was able to harness the power of a dragon. Also something heavens feel rude. Siegfried's Rheingold was the treasure that he took from the cursed dragon Fafnir. This gold was the source of a great deal of problems for the Dragon Slayer and is what inevitably led to his own death. It would later be discarded into a river in an act of sabotage, but we will get more to that once we cover the Berserkers. Caesar's commentary on the Gallic War is one of the most well-known books in Latin and is still used today in teaching the language, for its simple and understandable word usage. The book itself includes the 9-year campaign against the Gauls written in a third-person account despite Caesar being present for them. Prelati was a supposed friend, accomplice, and possible sexual partner for Giles. Prelati himself was supposedly a warlock able to summon demons with the assistance of his spellbook, and as such, one could postulate that a demon was summoned to assist Giles in his crimes. So this one is very likely a fabrication, but plays more into the idea that Daon and Maria had a very good relationship, which is speculated in history and not actually a fact. However, let's run with the Fate rendition on why this would be important for Daon. Daon is transgender and lived the majority of her life as a woman despite being born a male. So, assuming that Maria was aware of this fact, receiving a gift from royalty acknowledging this change in self and gender would naturally leave a lasting impact. Okita's headband, all battered and worn, is likely symbolic of how Okita died, which was alone in a near-abandoned hospital in Tokyo as the Shinsengumi fled, and this headband that she likely wore throughout her time as a Shinsengumi member marks that despite her illness she remained to fight and was sincere to the Shinsengumi until she died. For what my research is turning up, there is no such thing as a druidic energy drink. However, we do know that such drinks did exist in something called Coddle, which was a warm drink that supposedly gave the consumer amazing energy and nutrition. Mordred's has no bearing in real history, and more so harkens to the conflicting nature of who Mordred is in Fate. On the one hand, she loves her father and wants nothing more than for Arturia to see her as an equal. However, she's also fighting against her nature that she was given at birth to take the crown by force. So what is captured in this Bond CE is a moment likely on the day that she died as she contemplates who it is that she really wants to be. Note the various swords in the background belonging to the various Knights of the Round Table. What else would Nero Bride have but a pair of wedding rings for obvious reasons? Clearly this is not based on historical fact and this costume itself comes from Fate CCC, but rather this may harken to Fate Extella where the rings can be used to store Hakuno during battle while she gives directions. The Bay Laurel uses the basis for these rings, holds the meaning of victory and triumph, both things held very closely to Nero. Shiki's harkens back to her first encounter on a snowy night with Mikiya Kokuto, who is the husband of Shiki. Rama's indestructible sword is Nandaka, the sword of Vishnu. This blade is called the Sword of Purity and Destroyer of Ignorance, which fits nicely with the description of the Bond CE that states that his ignorance to the terror of war was shattered when he finally needed to take up his blade to free Sita. Naturally, Lancelot's CE would be his encounter with the Lady in the Lake, as it was the Lady in the Lake who raised the orphan knight. Fittingly, and the starter to a trend that we will continue to see is Gawain's horse, Gringolet, or Gringolat. Gringolat was the favorite steed of the knight and was said to be powerful enough to bring victory to whomever rode atop it, unless you were a Sir Kay who still lost a jousting match while borrowing the enchanted horse. Gawain personally cared for and treated his horse like it were a proper pet, and when it was eventually killed from beneath him, he went into a berserk-like rage that lasted for an entire day. If you've played all the way up through Camelot, then you already know the truth behind this one. Bedivere's arm is actually the sacred sword Excalibur, taken this form thanks to Merlin, so it may better assist Bedivere on his journey to return it. If you're wondering how he lost his real arm, in most legends he actually only lost his hand, and it was just lost in what is simply called a battle. However, he was unfettered by the loss and continued to be one of the more powerful knights of the round. Liz opened up a Halloween cafe and wants you to visit her, so she gave you an invitation. That's it, that's the lore. Musashi's harkens back to the practices of Buddhism and the attempt to reach zero or emptiness. This comes from Musashi's Book of the Five Rings, which calls on the traditional 5 elements present in Buddhism, with void being something equated to emptiness. Once someone achieves emptiness, they are at what is said to be the jumping off point to achieve nirvana. So if you want to look at it in that light, Musashi's entire role and presence in FGO was attempting to reach enlightenment. I am admittedly not as brushed up on my prototype lore as I should be, so forgive me if I'm misremembering details, but this Bond CE I believe is directly from Prototype. I imagine that this is where he first meets his master Ayaka and removes his pledges of being a king to instead serve her as a knight. This is another gag Bond CE, but it's cute in a way. Tenma, who is mentioned by name in this Bond CE, is the Japanese version of Mara, who is another aspect of Kama. The basis behind the CE in particular is the demonic levels of training that Suzuka puts into attempting to score a proper master/boyfriend. Also, she just seems to be a tad clingy with her flip phone. No real lore on this one aside from them being fresh bandages for Fran's summer form in the event that the ones that she is currently wearing get damaged. This Bond CE alludes to a tale where someone was able to deflect a sword with only 2 hats. The CE itself calls into question the legitimacy of this tale, but it may allude to Yagyu's hereditary book of the Art of War, in which he has an entire section dedicated to knowing how to defeat someone when you are unarmed, mostly by using the environment to your advantage. This one is a mixture of comedy and real lore fitting together like a snug puzzle. The congealed wisdom wording may be chosen purposefully, as the wisdom Sigurd gained was thanks to the congealed blood of the dragon Fafnir that he bathed in. As to why they are glasses, it's because Brynn thinks that he looks hot with them on. If you cleared Summer 3, then you will recognize this as Maeve's album of her pictures taken at the Lulahawa beach. Supposedly, the photos in it are good enough to win her the prize in all but the final loop. Diarmid possessed 2 different sets of swords and spears that he used for various occasions. He would always bring 1 sword and 1 spear. However, manifesting with his 2 swords translated to mean the Great Fury and Little Fury, they are now his Bond CE. He received the Great Fury Moral Talk from Monin MacLear as a gift, which was always able to cleanly cleave its target. He received the Little Fury Bagel Talk from his foster father Angus Og. Lan Lang's Bond CE is the mask that he actually wore in battle and the cup of poison he used to kill himself. The tale of Lan Lang wearing the mask into battle is true, though it was a much more horrifying mask than the one that Faye presents us with. This is because, by all accounts, Lan Lang appeared to be a beautiful woman. As for why Lan Lang killed himself, his cousin had become the emperor, and after a passing comment made by Lan Lang about familial affairs, the new emperor became paranoid. Lan Lang avoided confrontation with the emperor out of respect and possible fear for his life, but one day he was sent a cup of poison in order to kill himself. And so he did. Shortly after, the entire Gao line, because remember Lan Lang's real name is Gao Chonggong, was wiped out by the Zhao, as Lan Lang was their best general. This is one where we get hit by some of the real sad shit. What is depicted here is Benienma laying down her sword in what can presumably be the grave of the woodcutter who saved her, a small grave in the mountains where she can enjoy the springtime with one of the only humans she ever came to trust, or at least the memory of them. The CE is meant to invoke a sense of ennui for a long time ago and a memory to be treasured. Keeping up with the depressing atmosphere, we have Lakshmi Bai's. Depicted is the place of her death, Gwalior, which I'm absolutely saying wrong. She was overrun by the royal army and killed unceremoniously after being knocked off her horse, where she was then shot with a carbine. The CE, however, calls upon the aftermath, which was the raging spirit of vengeance, which would eventually repel the forces of Britain. Oh no, we're still sad boys, so let's keep going. This one is titled At Dream's End and shows the wreckage of the Argo. So here's where myth and the current presentation of things are slightly different. The Bond CE shows the wreckage of what is probably the aftermath of a storm, but the actual Argo, after its adventures, was deemed a sacred item and placed under Poseidon's protection. Jason continued to live on the desecrated ship alone, no longer with a purpose. He was then crushed by a falling beam, or in some tellings, the figurehead of Hera, the goddess of marriage, which is present in the Bond CE. So if you were to lift up that statue of Hera just off the beach, you could probably see a little crushed Jason underneath it. After this, the Argo would then be added to the constellations. This is a real work known as the Shinsetsu Yumi Harazuki that was written by Takezawa Baikin with illustrations by Hokusai. The story featured Minamoto no Tametomo, who was the uncle of Ushiwaka Maru. Why this was chosen as her Bond CE is kind of beyond me, but it alluded to 2 different servants that were going to be showing up soon, which kind of stays in theme with her because her outfit also predicted several of the future Kuroboshi foreigner designs. Saber Astolfo's is less of anything of historical merit and more of a declaration of love for the master and desire to always be by their side. Leaving the sword for a moment, as the CE is called, has the secondary meaning of allowing oneself to be vulnerable. Also in the Bond CE's description, Astolfo says the words throbbingly. For Bond tending the Dioscuri, you receive their weapons, or more so an explanation of what their weapons are. They are a sword wielded by Pollux and a discus wielded by Castor. The more interesting thing with these descriptions is the explicit mention that both are made of adamus. Adamus is better known as adamant, which is a fictional metal that is used to describe a malleable kind of diamond. Other fictional things that were made of adamant are Cronus the Scythe, the very same that cut off Saturn's balls, the Gates of Tartarus, and adamant is used to bind Satan in Hell in Milton's Paradise Lost. Tomoe gives to us her VR headset, created by a member of Caldea's staff from blueprints in the database. This set is compatible with almost every available console and permits the use of single and dual hand compatibility. This was Tomoe's favorite form of relaxation during the Genpei War probably, and also it was confirmed in her Valentine's lines that they have H games that she's probably played. Saito's is one of the most depressing things I've ever read, and in a sense it's glorious. What is seen is his old police uniform from after the Shinsengumi. Saito was one of the few members of the corps to survive, and as such carries the memories of his former comrades. The CE is meant to show Saito reflecting on his old days as a corps member, and and wondering if all of his comrades got what they really wanted in the end. The most painful part of this one is that it has a strong basis in real history and is likely a thought that did plague the real Saito up until the day that he died. Watanabe's requires you to have cleared Heian-kyo to be fully understood. Fate is doing a bit of a fill in the blanks with Suna because his actual history is kind of a mystery. We know that he existed, or at least is attested to having existed, but his personal affairs in childhood are not really discussed. What Fate did was color in that picture with the knowledge that we do have, that being that Suna was the most lethal Oni slayer amongst Raiko's 4 retainers. Suna's Bond CE depicts him coming back to his home to see an Oni has killed his entire family, including the girl that he loved. Plot twist, the girl that he loved actually became the Oni who killed everyone, and that girl was none other than our very own Ibaraki, which just kind of throws a wrench into their weird cute kill each other dynamic. Ibuki bestows upon us the Kusanagi no Tsurugi, the sword that was claimed by the sea god Susanoo after severing the tail of Yamata no Orochi, and would later be used as an offering to Amaterasu to smooth over a previous dispute the pair had about killing the harvest god. As to the major importance of this sword, it is considered to be one of Japan's 3 sacred treasures along with the mirror Yata no Kagami and the jewel Yasakani Magatama. This sword's connection with Ibuki comes from her relationship to Yamata no Orochi, as well as her own level of divinity. Fun side fact, supposedly humans are not to look upon the sacred sword directly unless given permission, and at one point a bunch of priests caught a glimpse of it, and all but one of them died shortly after from an unknown disease. Karna gets his champion's belt from being a champion Santa. There isn't really any IRL lore to this, because it's literally a man pretending to be Santa and touting a victory belt as if he didn't have class advantage against his opponent for the final bout. Muramasa's is a masterpiece of a sword that he gifts to the master as a memento of the time spent together. While this should go without saying, the historical Muramasa was one of Japan's most famous swordsmiths. Now, the act of giving a sword or a knife as a gift is seen in many cultures to be a sign of bad luck, and a sword or knife given as a gift is often given with a coin strapped to it to symbolically be given back to purchase the blade. However, in Muramasa's time, this act would have been a way to impress or please their lord. This is one that has its lore all centered around FGO, save for the fact that she's making meat pies. Barghast has the hobby of cooking and is so pleased of having gotten a master who she considers to be her partner that she's pouring wifely love into each monstrously sized dish for you to eat. What a cutie. Okita Altars is another FGO-centric one with a gift of 2 swords that make up the one talking sword Rengoku. Rengoku is of course the child next to Okita there. What this Bond CE serves to explain to us is that the 2 swords are actually 2 halves of the same whole, and when combined they are more powerful. Also, there's an implication here that Okita wants to serve us for the remainder of our lives. The Trunk Sisters baby elephants are given as a gift here, or rather a scene of one of the Trunk Sisters playing with the baby elephants. The game itself remarks that it doesn't exactly know what they are, but makes the comment that they have the eyes of quote-unquote everybody who supported them. The significance of the elephants to the Trunk Sisters comes from them often being depicted riding war elephants into battle, and these sisters themselves are considered to be a symbol of Vietnamese nationalism and freedom. Elephants historically have been an influential part of Vietnamese culture, and religion is a symbol of strength in war, so combining freedom and strength together makes this gift all the more meaningful. Charlemagne's sword Joyeuse, which I'm absolutely saying wrong because I'm not French, is the prize for taking him to Bond 10. You can actually see the sword on display at the Louvre if you're in need of a Charlie catalyst. Legend states that part of the spear Longinus was placed into the hilt of this blade, and that it was made of the same material as Roland's Durandal. So through and through, it's a holy sword that you can actually see. It was also used in the coronation of the French monarchy for a time, and a town of the same name supposedly got the name because the sword was lost in battle and a knight went and retrieved it, and Charlie gifted him land that became the town. And what is by far the funniest Bond CE, we have Roland's naked ass. This is from the ever-famous tale of Roland losing his mind and stripping himself naked and attacking people at random. Essentially, he became a wild man with mythical strength and was only eventually calmed down by Astolfo returning his sanity to him, which he found on the moon because all things that are lost end up on the moon. You may be fooled into believing at first glance that this broken blade is that of Sir Gawain, but rather it is the sword of the Red Knight, Sir Ironside, who appears in Garrett's legend, where she sets off to prove herself worthy of her knightly lineage. As opposed to the Fate rendition of Sir Ironside being a manifestation of calamity, in myth, he's rather a knight with the strength of 7 men, who fights because he has sworn to his lady to kill Sir Lancelot. Garrett spares Sir Ironside and he eventually joins the Round Table Knights. Finally, we have Yamanami. Yamanami's is another tearjerker one because what you're seeing right here is the very last thing that Yamanami himself saw. This is a seppuku dagger, and the thoughts running through his head in the Bansi are his prayers for his fellow members of the Corps. The reason why he has to commit seppuku is because he broke the tenet of the Shinsengumi to not leave. I have an entire video on the subject, so go check it out. But the long and the short of it is that Yamanami's views of the Shinsengumi had soured for one reason or another, and he decided to defect. The Shinsengumi sent Okita after him when they found out that he was missing, knowing Yamanami would not hurt Okita, as Okita was like a younger brother to him. When he was brought back, several members wanted to help him get away, but he resigned himself to his fate. Thus was the tragic death of Yamanami Keisuke. So on that happy note, thanks for watching. If you want to see more videos like this, subscribe and let me know in the comments. Check out my links below for my Discord, Twitch, and Twitter, but for now guys, keep your chin up. Peace.